Hey everyone, it's JD here. I'm a software engineer working at Microsoft, and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about DOM and its manipulation using JavaScript. In the end, we'll also do a small fun project. So let's get started.
So what exactly is DOM? So DOM stands for Document Object Model. You could say it's a representation of your HTML page inside the browser. It kind of acts like a bridge between your static HTML page and your dynamic JavaScript. So before moving forward, we'll see what we are going to learn in this video. So initially, we'll start with how we can select an HTML element using the various methods provided in the browser. And then we'll see how we can manipulate it using the JavaScript, right? And in the end, we'll see a live example. We'll try to implement a small functionality to check our learnings, right? Before moving forward, I want to tell you about the prerequisites of this. So the prerequisites are: you need to know HTML, the tags and the attributes that are used in HTML, some CSS to understand, and basic understanding of JavaScript. You should be able to know what are loops, what are different JavaScript objects, what are different functions that we can use in JavaScript, right? So with that, let's just start. So here I have a small basic HTML page, with few of the HTML tags. And what I want to show you is the DOM structure for this page. So for that, I'll head on to my browser and go to this link. So this is nothing but a DOM visualizer where you can paste your HTML and it will in return give you a DOM structure of your HTML page. Right? This is very fun to see. And you have an HTML root node with your head tag as a children, body tag as a children, and the body tag has its own children, right? So this is how your DOM structure going to look like for the HTML page. Now what I want to do is I want to go over the various methods that we can use to select elements in your DOM, right? So we have these functions. These are document.getElement by ID, document.getElements by tag name, document.getElements by class name, and so on, right? And you will see that all of these functions, they're all starting with the word document, right? What is this document, right? For that, we'll head on to the browser again, and we'll see. I'll open up the new tab, and I'll open up the very page for which we were seeing the HTML, right? I'll open up that page, and this is how that page looks, right? With some header and paragraph and all that. And I'll open up the console, and let's see what exactly document is, right? Type out the word document and press enter. You'll see the console returns something. What is this? This is your whole HTML document, starting from the HTML tag with head element and body element. So this is nothing but tree representation of your whole DOM, and all the functions are being called upon this document.getElement by ID, right? So when you do document.getElement by ID, this one, and inside you'll have to pass on some ID, it is going to return you the element with that specific ID, right? So before trying out all these functions and seeing what they give us, we'll write up a HTML page. Let's just go back to our code editor and create a new file, index.html, and start with basic HTML structure. I'll write my favorite movies, right? Inside that, I'll have a h1 tag with the same name. Copy it and paste it here. I'll also give it an ID as heading, right? And a paragraph tag with an ID as para and some random text. Okay, and I'll create a unordered list, with the ID as list, and inside my unordered list I'll have some couple of LIs, and these LIs will have a class. I'm using class because there will be multiple LIs, right? So this will have list item as the class, and inside that I'll have some text. Let's say I'll give him some of my favorite movies. I'll just copy and paste again to populate the list. Okay, let's just write some random movies. Let me write this avatar. I'm just writing my movies, my favorite movies. Okay, all Hollywood. Let me just give one Bollywood movie as well. Okay, cool. So we have this page, right? And also I'll just add a pre-written CSS, which I already have. Right here, the style.css. I'll just include it so it looks good on the browser as well. Now let's head on to the browser and see how it looks. Go back, open up index.html, and this is how our page looks, right? Cool. So the HTML page is set. Let's go back to the code editor. I'll also include a JavaScript file. I'll add the src as index.js, right? And create index.js in the same directory. Right? Save this, go back and reload the page. Reload the page, we get the DOM as the output. Okay, let me just increase the terminal size here so you can see what is the output that is coming. Cool. So I want to try, I'll split this so we can see the code and the browser as well. Let's remove this. We don't need that. Okay, cool. So inside, first I want to try getting element by ID, right? How do we do that? So it's just simple. I'll just take a variable, right? Let item and equal to document dot get element by ID. VS Code is helping us finish the function, and inside the ID I'll pass on the ID which I want to grab. So first I'll try to grab the heading element, right? And likewise I'll do console.log for the item that I'm getting. Save this, do a refresher, and you can see on the browser I'll get h1 because it had the ID heading, right? So this is how your get element by ID works. Then we'll come back to the second function, which is get elements by the tag name. How does that work? So it's just simple. Instead of ID, we'll just pass the tag name that we want, right? So I would like to grab the paragraph element, right? So let me do that. I'll do get element by elements by tag name. Remember, there is a difference. Here we are going to type get elements. There is an S after the element. That means we'll get multiple elements, right? And I'll pass on the parameter as P. Save it and refresh it, and you can see I get an HTML collection, right? Inside that there is an item at the 0th index, which is a P para, and if I hover here you can see the paragraph element is being highlighted, right? So that is important to see. So whenever you use get elements, it is going to return you a collection of elements, right? But we have just one single paragraph element. Let's just do multiple. So I know that I have written multiple LIs, all these things are LIs. So I'll just do an LI and refresh this again, and you can see it lists up the 5 LI elements. Pretty cool, right? Now let's go on to get elements by class name. So it's just simple. Instead of tag name, we are going to pass the class name. And as you remember, in the HTML that I've written before, I've given the class name for each li as list item. So I will try to grab them and output them on the console, right? So I'll do list item, save it, right? I'll just reduce this a bit, go on the browser, reload the page, and you'll see again I'm getting the HTML collection like this, right? So this is how we are going to select the HTML elements, right? These are some of the functions. There are many other functions, right? There is get elements by name as well. Okay, and right now we have the function, right? We have the element, but what's next? Are there any other ways through which we can grab it? So there are two other functions, which is document.querySelector and document.querySelectorAll. So now let's talk about document.querySelector. So in the previous function we would pass ID, tag name, class name and such, but in this function we are going to pass a query, right? What exactly is the query? So to see that, let's just move on to the code editor, and the query can be a tag name or a ID or a class name. So what am I talking about? If you have read about CSS selector, you would exactly know what I'm talking about, right? Let's say if I want to grab an tag name, so I'll just pass in the query just the tag name, right? And if I want to get an element by ID, I'll pass the ID name with hash, right? The autocomplete, right? And if I want to grab something by the class name, I'll use the dot and then the class name, right? Let's just quickly see an example of this, right? So I'll type document.querySelector and I will try to grab the heading element, right? So that is the h1. Save this and reload it, and you can see I got the h1 element on my console, right? And let's say I want to grab something by the ID, right? We remember the paragraph's ID was para, right? I can show you on the HTML, right? I want to grab this element. So for that, I'll just type hash para and save this and reload this. You'll see on the console, you'll get the p tag. Pretty cool. Then we'll go on and try to grab all the list elements, right? With the class name as list item, right? We have given the allied the class as list item. So for that, we'll do dot list item and save this and then refresh the page. So you can see here we only got one element. Why is that? That is because this is document.querySelector and we have two methods. One is document.querySelector and one is document.querySelectorAll. That's the major difference between both of them. So querySelectorAll will return all the elements that match your query, and querySelector will only return the first element that will match your query. So that is the difference, right? So querySelectorAll is gonna return you the whole list, right? So we'll do querySelectorAll and pass in the dot list item as the class name and refresh it. Now you can see in the console we are getting node list, right? All the li items. So that is a major difference between that. And one thing that is important to notice here is this is gonna give you node list as the output. Earlier we were getting HTML collection as the output. So that is a major difference, right? Both are totally different. Okay. Now let's try to see how we can manipulate these. Right? We saw how to get the elements, select the elements. Now let's look on to how we can go and manipulate these using JavaScript.